Hello, New Zealand. March for life. To march on behalf of the most vulnerable, the most precious, our children, our future. You are marching for mothers and fathers, for families, to support them, to nourish them, because we know that our countries are founded on families, are founded on the future, which is our children. Over 500,000 lives have been lost in New Zealand to abortion. Our movement is a winning one. This is the good news. Change is possible.
All right, there we go. You know where to be on the 7th of March. I saw that somebody said about notifications for YouTube. I think it was Jackie in YouTube. You need to make sure that you like our channel and that you click the link that says get notified when we go live. That's if you're on YouTube. Of course, you may be watching across our plethora of social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, what else? We're on X, we're on Blue Sky, we're on Threads, we're on Instagram. So we are everywhere. You just can't miss us. All right, let's get into it. It's Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th. Should we be worried? Of course not. It's Friday, end of the day, end of the week. Friday, we call it. Let's get into it. This is Daybreak. Yep, it's the 13th of February, and it's been a bit of a hard week because I don't know about you, but it's kind of like been the first 5-day week that maybe you've had to do, especially if you're involved in the school system, or maybe you've just got back to work. We've had a couple of short weeks with anniversary weekend in Waitangi, and now suddenly 5 days in a row, and we're all in a bit of a shell shock. Anyway, let's check the newspapers just briefly. What are the lamestream media saying? The New Zealand Herald and News Talk ZB are going on about the fact that the school lunches, Cabinet has changed the name of it. It was called Kaora Ka'ako, which I'm sure you've never heard and you've probably never used. Anyway, they've changed it back to, guess what? Healthy school lunches. Yeah. So it's interesting, but it makes news, doesn't it? I'll come back to that point. Stuff talks about the fact that a 35-year-old was supposed to be booked in to speak to MPs about access to treatment and diagnoses for ovarian cancer. But tragically, she passed away, and her funeral was on the day that she was supposed to be meeting with MPs. But perhaps the media coverage will raise the issue anyway. In the Dominion Post in Wellington, they call it the Post now, they're covering the New Zealand Economic Forum, and they talk about the silver tsunami. What's the silver tsunami? Basically, it means lots of old people. And it's because New Zealand has a fertility crisis. We're not having babies. And when you don't have babies, you don't have a younger workforce to pay for the retirement age of the silver tsunami. We've got a demographic problem, but nobody really wants to deal with it. No government wants to promote having babies and maybe marriage, some obvious solutions like that. So that's going to be continued to be talked about. In Christchurch, in the press, they're talking about the fact that if you go to this brand new, spanking new looking stadium, which looks pretty impressive, you're going to be paying a levy. If you buy tickets, you're going to be paying extra, even though, Christchurch people, your rates have already paid for part of the stadium. So there we go. They just can't stop taking money. In Radio New Zealand, they're talking about the fact that Judith Collins, who's retiring from politics, has been appointed to the Law Commission, and there was no recruitment process or no other candidates. The government said that she was the best positioned person for the job. Political appointment, nakedly political. Yes, well, it is. We already know that. When Phil Goff went up to be the ambassador in the UK before the brain explosion that got him sacked, the Trump derangement syndrome, that was there's lots of political appointments that go on. So, yeah, I think that shout will be heard by nobody. One News, their lead story is about an Auckland couple, an 80-year-old couple who woke up to find a stranger sleeping in their room in Bucklands Beach. And basically they're sounding the alarm and saying, well, because it's summer, don't leave your doors open. because people might just wander in and sleep on the floor. Apparently, one of the couple got up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet and tripped over somebody sleeping on their floor, who then escaped. Probably someone who was high or drunk or something. So, yeah, interesting development. So anyway, that's what all the stories are talking about. Anyway, let's get into our stories that I'm keen for you to know about, and correct a couple of the stories that we may have seen. Firstly, there's been this coverage about the fact that if there's a big stink in Wellington, literally, the sewage isn't working. And Tamitha Paul is a Green MP, one of the many wacky Green MPs. And she wants to defund the police, and she wants to abolish prisons, that type of wacky. And she was on council when they voted for either cycleways, but they also had a vote for fixing the infrastructure of sewage. And guess which one they didn't vote for? The sewage one. And which one they did vote for? The cycleways. Yeah. And so she tried to defend. She was on TV yesterday, and she tried to defend the decision that they didn't fix the poo problem, but they were happy to do the cycleways. Have a listen to her justification for having bike lanes.
This argument of what's more important, cycleways or pipes, is just a stupid argument, because that's not the way that councils make decisions. Not any council around the country at all, period.
They do. That is fundamentally what they do. They make decisions about priorities. You don't have infinite money. Unless you charge ratepayers like wounded bulls, you don't have infinite money, so you need to prioritise what you're spending money on. That's why I'm trying to ask the question, to get an idea of what is the list of priorities.
And you saw at that meeting what the list of priorities were. When we made each of those decisions, it wasn't a question of, is this thing taking away from another thing?
Yes,
it was, do we want to fund these things, and can they be delivered? And the reason that cycleways are important is because, one, they make the roads wider and more accessible for buses, but also they protect people from being hit by cars. And that is important to me, and I know we probably have different views on that, but I was the climate change spokesperson.
Who knew that cycleways were to protect pedestrians? Bus lanes were to protect pedestrians from other cars. I never knew, and it makes the roads wider. Wow. Okay. Never saw that one coming either. Anyway, some interesting justification. But anyway, Wellington, you're paying the price, literally, and the stink. Yeah. Now, vape stores. Article talking about the fact that vape stores are getting around the regulations by having vape stores within vape stores. This is exactly what the cannabis industry would have done if we'd voted yes in the referendum. They talked about regulation and stopping young kids buying marijuana. But of course, they can't even control the vape stores. The vape stores are getting around the regulations. Speaking of regulations, there was a petition presented to Parliament to Chris Pink, National MP, and it was about basically, if an underage person goes into an alcohol store and buys stuff illegally, even though there is, and they're using a cash flow card, which most of them would be doing, or their credit card, which is a youth-based one, the banks don't stop the purchase happening, even though it is flagged as an underage purchase. And so there's a petition to say that more expectation needs to be placed on the banks. It's not really age verification. It's an example of where you're protecting children and you're expecting big tech, which is the banks, which are making millions and almost billions of profit every year, to just put some restrictions and show some responsibility. At the end of last year, we saw the tragic statistics that the act of kindness by Jacinda Ardern and the politicians who voted for one of the world's most radical abortion laws in New Zealand, we've seen this big jump in abortions. And we've also seen a big jump in late-term abortions. And we know that children are being born alive as well and left to die, similar to what's been happening in Australia. And there's been a big furor over there. But Ken from Right to Life sent me some stats that he got from an Official Information Act request, and I was fascinated by this because, as you can see there, the blue represents women, because only women can get pregnant, sorry to tell you, The women who have had no previous abortions. So that's the blue. But as you will see there, there's a huge amount of repeat abortions being used as contraceptive, basically. And look at for Māori and Asian, it's as high as 65% are repeat abortions. And as you go up the scale, like the grey is where they've had 2 previous abortions. So they're on to their 3rd abortion. Yellow is where they've had 3 previous abortions. Up the top there is people who have had 6 or more previous abortions. And, you know, abortion should concern us all, but those type of statistics are shocking. The good news in the report, and this was a statistic that was sent through, is that the workforce, so just to give you an idea, the total medical professional workforce is, there's about 17,000 doctors in New Zealand and 58,000 nurses. There is, bottom right-hand corner there, 400 who are part of the abortion workforce. So that is about 0.4% of the workforce, which I think is a great thing. One question I do have for you, though, is that region, Te Ikarora, Te Tai Tokerau, where are those? What are we referring to here? Which actually raises a second point, which is back to the school lunches issue. This is the latest news in the New Zealand Herald this morning. Apparently we're going to have this massive downpour. So, you know, take all the clothes you've left outside to dry in the sun, bring them in. But I read this and I thought, and maybe you can tell me the answer. It says, weather warnings have been issued for most of Te Ika a Maui. Now, I know where Maui is. I love going there for holidays. Haven't been for a long time. But that's in Hawaii. So are we giving weather forecast for Maui? Actually, I just want to see if it's on this. Te Ika. No, it's not on that graph either. All these terms, and I have no idea what they're referring to. Am I the problem? Am I the one that should know what's going on? Do you know what's going on? Anyway, if you can tell me, where is Te Ika o Maui? Hope I said that right. Salvation Army report, we did touch that on that Wednesday and we just looked at the media coverage, but I've done a bit of a deeper dive into it. And look, it says that there's a concerning increase in family violence and child abuse, as we predicted. We actually predicted it almost 20 years ago that it was going to happen. And the finger is pointed at the cost of living. The problem is that when you dive deep into the data, let me just show you 4 quick graphs to show that that argument doesn't wash. Firstly, child poverty rate has been decreasing over time, little uptick just in the last year. Number of children in material hardship has also been dropping, but a slight uptick in the last 2 years. So on that basis, if the argument is that child abuse and family violence is because of poverty, the rates should be coming down during these 2 periods because the poverty rate has been coming down. Here's the problem. It's been consistently going up during that period. So, and this is hospitalization due to assault. So this argument simply doesn't wash, but it's the argument used by the media and it's used by people who shouldn't have a job because we shouldn't even have the position in the first place. For example, the Children's Commissioner. I just want to play you a little bit of what she said. Can somebody please tell me what her solution is to the high rates of child abuse? Please have a listen.
Family violence at record levels and economic stress pushing families to the limit. Advocates warn more needs to be done to prevent tragedies like Malachi's from happening again.
Yes, Sam, it is absolutely grim reading, and what it shows is that far too many of our families in whānau are under significant pressure. Life is really tough for them right now, and we know that when households are struggling, children are struggling. And so what we see when it comes to our child poverty rates, those went up last year on the official statistics.
Yes, well, they went up, but they'd been coming down for a long period of time. So they're just looking at 1 year to try and argue their weak argument.
Every child in New Zealand should be growing up safe and well.
Yep.
And when we turn back to the issue of poverty.
When we turn back to the issue of poverty, because that's the only thing I can think of talking about,
We can see that when children are living in poverty, we are depriving them of a full childhood. We are depriving them of their full potential. And so the need to see change on these things is urgent.
What change?
Collectively as a nation, and I'm talking about at the systemic level and then at our community, collective, public at large level, I simply don't think that we have placed enough urgent focus on addressing these things. We haven't prioritised children to the extent that we need to. I acknowledge Malachi for the precious child that he was, very much loved by his whānau.
Malachi was a 5-year-old who was murdered. Mother was a drug dealer who was in prison. Where was the protection of the whānau? Where does that statement come from?
And actually, it's also for the public at large too. Let's collectively focus on children and make them our priority this year.
Okay, so solution? Yeah, okay, there wasn't a solution. Basically, there's no discussion around family formation. There's no discussion around absence of fathers, which was the case in Malachi's example. There's no discussion around marriage rates. Can't mention the M word. No discussion around drug and alcohol abuse, which puts children at risk. So once again, missing some of the basic answers. But the other thing is that Lindsay Mitchell, who's written a number of our reports, she's a researcher based in Wellington. She had a look into the report and she highlighted a couple of statements in the Sally's report where I think they're simply not willing to tackle the issues of why we're seeing adverse statistics coming, especially out of Māori, because of the low marriage rates, unfortunately, in Māori. That's a fact. And the weak formation of families. And it says this, after the section on children and youth, it says, the overrepresentation of Māori tamariki and rangatahi in state care reflects the enduring impacts of colonisation and breaches of te tiriti of Waitangi. These systems perpetuate structural barriers. And then on work and incomes, despite the Māori economy contributing billions to the New Zealand economy, that's right, there's been a lot of settlements to these iwis haven't there. There's been systemic barriers in the labour market and welfare system mean some tangata whenua cannot access economic opportunities due to current systems and the lasting impacts of colonisation that dismantled Maori economy, autonomy through land alienation and resource losses. And then after crime and punishment, the ongoing impacts of colonisation and systematic failure to uphold te tiriti o Waitangi in terms of the criminal justice system cannot be separated from the disproportionate overrepresentation of Māori colonial policies, land alienation and imposition of state justice systems. There's your argument they want for getting rid of prisons. So, anyway, that's why we're not going to get to the solution of this, because we're not willing to deal with the elephant in the room, which is that strong marriages, strong families, safest place for children to be growing up in. The stats are quite clear on that. All right, let's have a look at, of course, I do have to just show you this one. The media are going to go very quiet on the Epstein files, and that's because they've always wanted to connect two names, Epstein and Trump. And unfortunately, the papers have actually realized that the release of all the documents actually realized that Donald Trump was one of the first whistleblowers against Epstein. So, yeah, that's going to go a little bit awkward. Let's just deal with the, it was an absolute tragedy in Canada. School shooting. What was it, about 1,000 kilometres northeast of Vancouver. Now, I've actually travelled through that area about 10 years ago. But the problem was that the shooter, well, you probably saw the media coverage, but let's just look at it, because unfortunately the media have tripped over their own lies in reporting the facts of this case. The facts of the case is that it was a dude who was wearing a dress and wanted to identify as a girl, but it was a man. It was a dude, okay? Biological male. And so the police did everything they could, the authorities, not to actually say that. So this was the first one. It became a person.
That includes the deceased gun person.
Okay.
And then separately, do you know the
gun
person's
person. Okay,
relationship
so it was the gun
to-
person. And then the police turned up for the official announcement, but they didn't actually admit it. It took a media question for them to actually admit something. Have a listen.
So a suspect is identified as an 18-year-old female.
Female.
By the name of Jessie. We have a history of police attendance at the family residence. Some of those calls were related to mental health issues.
We've heard all around the world reports coming out from different media, not local but world.
Okay, the media are reporting that it's actually a man.
People that know the shooter, and they are all saying that this
Shooter is a male. Why
person
aren't you admitting
is
that? That's what the
Darcy
report is
not
asking.
saying this? Why are we hiding this from the public?
Why are we
Well,
hiding
first
it?
off, thank you for your question. We're not hiding it. In fact, you're the first media to ask the question.
We're not
I will
hiding
say
it.
this. We identified the suspect as they chose to be identified in
Oh.
public and in social media. I can say that Jessie was born as a biological male who approximately, in the information that I have, approximately 60 years
Okay,
old.
we identified the suspect as the way they wanted to be identified. So if I commit a crime, can I identify as a 2-year-old and then say that I didn't have the mind and willpower to be able to determine what I was doing? That's my defense in court. Can I identify as a furry and say, how could I commit that crime, Your Honour? So let's have a look at the New Zealand media coverage. Did they tell the truth? So this media conference was at 11 a.m. yesterday. This was the New Zealand Herald almost an hour later. Deadly mass shooting in Canada, what we know, and she, her, she does say there that police identified him as a transgender, saying that she began to transition 6 years ago. Now, he was 18. So they're saying that he started transitioning at 12. Let's look at our state broadcaster, One News. And this was after the news had come out that it was a male. Police identify suspect. What did they say? Calls to her home. Then we had One News later on in the afternoon. This is Radio New Zealand. State broadcaster, you're paying for it. Canadian school shooter identified as 18-year-old woman with mental health issues. This was in the afternoon, a couple of hours after the announcement was made that it was a biological male. And says 18-year-old woman. She once attended school. Does it actually say there? It talks about mental health issues. Doesn't actually say transgender, so it doesn't even mention it. And then we go to Stuff. Our New Zealand media are just fantastic, aren't they? This is at 1:22, so this is, what is it? That's 2.5 hours after the official announcement. Suspect is an 18-year-old with history of police visits to her home, and her, she, but then they say, oh, Jessie was born as a biological male. So they sort of begrudgingly admitted it right at the end. But then you go to the 6 o'clock news on TV3, which is Stuff's News or Stuffed, and they say this.
Canadian police have identified the shooter who killed 9 people and injured 25 in the remote town of Tumbler Ridge. She was 18-year-old Jessie Van Rootselaar, who
She was. Oh boy. Now you know why trust in media is tanking. Babylon B came out with this. I thought it was quite funny, playing on this whole shooter person or whatever it was, gun person. They said, Canadian reporter person announces police persons have identified gun person. Yeah, I don't know. It is getting like that, isn't it? Now, look, somebody alerted me to this amazing story that was doing the rounds on Facebook, and a few people sent it to me, and it's about a woman who went from transgender to transformed, and has just had her 3rd child. Let me just read a little bit of what it says. I lived inside a story that wasn't mine, hormones in my veins, scars carved into my chest. A false identity I called survival. I thought becoming someone else would heal what had been broken. Instead, it broke me in places I wouldn't understand until much later. The testosterone left its mark, cancer growing where life was meant to bloom, and still God stayed, waiting, patient. And then when I laid down the idol of who I thought I had to be, he didn't just renew my mind, he restored my body, he opened my womb, he gave me miracles I was told would never come, 3 children. And here's just a little video clip where she answers the question, if you were sitting across from yourself as a teenager, what would you say to yourself?
Oh my gosh, I would hug myself and beg myself not to mutilate my body. I would hug myself and beg myself to start praying that God would take away the dysphoria, to start praying that God would take away the uncomfortability, and to never ever lay on that operating table. I would say, Lex, you have no idea how God is going to wreck your plans for his greater good. If you would just let go now, if you would just surrender sooner, and God's going to blow you away. I would sympathize with myself and empathize with myself and say, look, I know that you feel like, God made you trans and you're believing this lie, but let me tell you, it's scary to surrender, but it's going to be the best decision of your life. God is going to do miraculous things. He's going to bless your marriage. It's not something to be afraid to lose. God's going to open your womb and bless you with children. Saying yes in a moment of surrender, even when you don't agree, it's going to be difficult and it's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth every fear that you could possibly have, because the Lord is going to bless it.
Yeah, her name is Lex Renick, R-E-N-I-C-K. Check her out. I wish I could play that in front of every church leader, especially woke church leaders who think that affirming the delusion and affirming chemicalization, castration, confusion of people who want to change their sex, they need to listen to Lex and understand that we're created male and female by God. Nobody can change that. Super Bowl. I did want to just briefly touch on Super Bowl, which happened. I mean, it's in the US, right? So we're not really interested in the game. I find the game boring, to be honest. I can never understand it. That's part of the problem. But anyway, a lot of the focus is around the ads. In fact, Samuel Bilton, who works with us, he said that if you wanted to place an ad for 30 seconds, it costs the company $8 million. That's how big the audience is. This was one of the ads. And guess what? It was pro-adoption.
I know you never expected this. The voices and the anger are so loud. I know you envisioned things differently. They're telling you that you've only got 2 choices. But the truth is, there's 3. Are these options difficult? Of course they are. But you deserve to know. Adoption is an option.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Pretty cool. Now, obviously, the big thing was that Turning Point USA put in an alternative show because Bad Bunny was the main act. I'll come back to that in a sec. TPUSA, I mean, the last I checked, 16 million views. I should have probably checked just before I came on air. But they had millions of views, but maybe not live. It was about a tenth, maybe slightly less than a tenth of the audience that were watching Bad Bunny. But still an amazing alternative. And look, they had some amazing stuff. This was the beginning of it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Turning Point USA All-American Halftime Show. And this one's for you, Charlie.
Yeah, lots of country music, tattoos, and yeah, it was, playing the national anthem, lots of pride, etc. But also this bit in one of the songs.
There's a book that's sitting in your house somewhere.
This is Kid Rock.
That could use some dusting off. There's a man who died for all our sins, hanging from the cross. You can give your life to Jesus, and he'll give you a second chance till you can't take it.
Yeah, till you can't. Yeah, very good. Now, look, just to give you the contrast, Bad Bunny was speaking in Spanish, but these are the lyrics to one of his songs. I have blacked out the worst words, lots of sexual connotation, sexual innuendo. I actually checked to ask, were the lyrics explicit? I asked Grok on X, and yep, it included explicit parts. But anyway, the media got the memo, and they said that it was all joy. Yep, all the media said Bad Bunny was joy, joyful, joy, joy, joy. That's what you call media pack mentality. Not the first time they've done it, of course, because Kamala Harris was joy, 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 joy as well. But at the end of the Turning Point USA halftime show, there was a lovely tribute to Charlie Kirk that I just want to show you to finish off with this morning.
I want to honor God in all that I do. I want to be a great husband, a great father. I want to serve this country. I want to try to continue to lead this movement and to speak truth and to never lie. To stop thinking about yourself all the time and instead think about what you should do to help other people and to defend this country above yourself.
I'm so inspired. This army of freedom fighters, we're going to be around for the next 100, 200 years because we know in the end our ideas will win.
God should be the most important thing in your life. But then beyond that, it's getting married, having children, building families.
My kids are my most important thing in my world. My wife and my kids and our relationship with God, the top 3 things.
And the more often that you choose the deep, the difficult, but the right path over the easy path is one that will reward you, your family, and this beautiful nation.
Yeah, very cool. Just before I go for Friday, as we head into the weekend, remember Wednesday I told you about this guy? He said he wouldn't get a haircut until Manchester United won 5 games in a row. And I told you that they were on 4 and they were playing West Ham. And if they won, he could finally cut his hair. Bad news, they drew. So he's back to 0 again, and he's got to wait for Manchester United to score 5 games in a row before he can cut all that hair off. I mean, look at that one on the left there. That's before on the right. And that's, maybe I should do that. Should I do that? I won't cut my hair until Liverpool win 5 games in a row. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, somebody says, just regarding the Charlie Kirk video, not a nose ring in sight. It's very good. All right. We are out of time. So, have a great weekend. And we will be back on Monday morning with Daybreak. Until then, see you later.